Welcome to another episode of Fill in the Blank podcast. I'm here with Evan. Hello? Evan, we're talking about the Montauk Project. What do you know about the Montauk Project?
I don't know. The second season wasn't very good.
It's for people that don't know, the program was inspired by Stranger Things, and I actually told Evan that, and he was like, "What?" And apparently he's seen Stranger Things. I have never seen it, so maybe you can give me a little bit of proof of what Stranger Things is about.
It's
Just the basis line.
it's like an '80s nostalgia trip, but like it's all based on this it's based in this kind of like kind of Stephen King ass, like the little girl has psychic powers and they were working on her in a lab, and then like the four local nerd kids find her and help her out, and they're all into D&D, and they're kind of treating it like a D&D game, and it's a fun ass show.
I'll have to check it out. So, the Montauk Project is a conspiracy theory that alleges there was a series of United States secret government projects conducted at Camp Hero or Montauk Air Force Station on Montauk, Long Island, for the purpose of developing psychological warfare techniques and exotic research, including time travel. The story of the Montauk Project originated in the Montauk Project, a series of books by Preston Nichols, which intermixes those stories with stories about the Philadelphia experiment. This was a basis for psychological experimentation, and a device known as the Montauk chair was created, which is a piece of furniture that used electromagnets to amplify psychic powers. Now, if anything I says pops up in Stranger Things that you remember, let me know. So most of the rumored experiments stemmed around child abduction for use in projects surrounding mind control.
I mean that instantly is kind of the basis. I forget if the little girl was abducted in Stranger Things or if she was like born and raised to be a psychic girl or whatever.
She was probably abducted.
I think that's more what they were hinting at. But yeah, it's that.
So the origin of this. Stories about the Montauk Project have circulated since the early 1980s. According to UFO researcher Jacques Vallée, the Montauk Experiment stories seem to have originated with the account of Preston Nichols, who claimed to have recovered repressed memories of his own involvement and claims that he is periodically abducted to continue his participation against his will. Nichols, born May 24, 1946 on Long Island, New York, claims to have degrees in parapsychology, psychology, and electrical engineering, and he has authored a series of books known as the Montauk Project series, along with Peter Moon, the primary topic of which is alleged activities as Montauk. These center on topics including United States government military experiments in fields such as time travel, teleportation, mind control, and contact with alien life, and staging faked Apollo moon landings, framed as developments which followed a successful 1943 Philadelphia experiment. These accumulate in a hole ripped in space-time in 1983.
Yeah, I think the show might take place in 1983, and it's about
like I said,
time.
Stranger Things was originally going to be called the Montauk Project, and we're going to learn a little bit more about that. The authors have encouraged speculation about the contents. For example, they wrote, "Whether you read this as science fiction or nonfiction, you are not in for an amazing story." In the first chapter, describing much of the content as soft facts and a guide for readers, and publishing a newsletter with updates to the story. The work has been characterized as fiction. So in the media, in 2004, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, the protagonist Jim Carrey begins the movie at Montauk, this place he had originally met his love interest, Kate Winslet, presumably because the premise of the story involves erasing/manipulating memories. The Montauk story features prominently in Thomas Pynchon's 2013 novel Bleeding Edge. It already was a popular movie called Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind in 2004, played by Jim Carrey.
I've been meaning to see that movie for actually 5 years. So.
Well, in 1985, Montauk Chronicles, a film adaptation of the conspiracy featuring Preston Nichols, Al Blake, and Stuart Pridlow, was released online in a DVD and Blu-ray. The film won the Best Documentary Award at the Philip K. Dick Film Festival in New York City and has been featured on Coast to Coast AM and the Huffington Post. The Netflix TV series Stranger Things in 2016 was allegedly inspired by the Montauk Project, and at one time Montauk was used as its working title.
Montauk.
In 2019, Incidents at Montauk, a found footage film inspired by the conspiracy, was released online. It was written and directed by Owen Mulligan. The film has been featured on Found Footage Critic. What do we know about conspiracy theories? A lot of the times these conspiracy theories are just either people denying the existence of it being possible. Sometimes it is a bit of a hoax, which kind of leads into folklore. But a lot of times we don't find out the information of it being true until 20 years after everyone involved in it has passed away. And it's sad to say that CIA keeps a lot of stuff from us. Is it hard to think that there wasn't a place they were abducting and testing on psychic people or people with psychic abilities?
It's not hard to think at all. People, especially back in the 80s, that was kind of like really still kind of fresh in the like Cold War era. Like people were trying all kinds of different desperate things to get ahead.
Russia created psychological warriors, or tried to create psychological warriors, which boasted our interest in it because we were like, oh, they're doing it, we should do it. And then next thing you know, we hopped on board, and even though Russia stopped diving into that realm way before.
Yeah, it's all see, it's unbelievable that this...
It's mind-boggling.
Just, people tried to do this stuff.
Yeah.
But, like, it actually being real and happening is a whole different thing.
So let's talk about exposing the Montauk Project. Rumors that the U.S. government had been conducting experiments in psychological warfare in Montauk at either Camp Hero or the Montauk Air Force Station began to bubble up in the mid-1980s. Preston Nichols legitimized the theorizing when he detailed the supposed events in a series of books in the Montauk Project Experiments in Time of 1982. Nichols recovered repressed memories about his stint as a subject in a mysterious experiment. Soon others involved with the Montauk Project came forward to corroborate some of Nichols' seemingly outlandish claims. As these and other subjects recovered more of their memories, they gave numerous interviews about their involvement in experiments involving space-time and other dimensions. Depending on the interview and when it was documented, the scope of what was happening in Montauk is expansive, enough to include many other conspiracies. As of now, the going narrative leading up to the 1983 incident begins during World War II with a much more famous covert military operation. This was... You ever think about remote viewing and the Jedi Force of, that stuff that happened in Maryland here, that based the movie on men who stare at goats? Is it hard to think that Stranger Things wasn't based on a government project? Government does some shady stuff. That would surprise you.
Government does a lot of shady stuff, and the fact that it's shady stuff means less people are needed to approve it, which means more stupid shit happens. So, like people, messing with kids to see if they have psychic abilities. Like, that kind of stupid shit. So...
This one's actually one of my favorites, the Philadelphia Experiment. This is how it ties in. In October 1943, the U.S. military supposedly conducted secret experiments in the naval shipyard in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, on a quest to discover a way to foil Nazi radar so that they could safely transport supplies to the Allied forces in Europe. The Navy has never admitted to any of these tests taking place, but according to conspiracy theorists, as far back as 1955, it has not only succeeded in uncovering how to make its ships invisible to radar, but accidentally managed to cause a battleship to travel, while no one's quite sure. To another time? Into a different dimension? The ship went somewhere, and after the military learned about the negative effects overexposure to their version of the Upside Down had on the crew, it shut the project down. What's your thoughts on teleportation?
Teleportation. That sounds different than what that was.
Okay, well, let me get down to this.
Or what it could have been,
Hollywood got its hands on the story before Stranger Things. The 1984 movie, The Philadelphia Experiment, adapted from a book about this conspiracy, follows two sailors serving on the USS Eldridge during World War II. Just like in history, the experiment crew finds itself in the ship blinked 40 years forward in time. Once in the future, they realized that the Philadelphia experiment has been revived in the 80s, but as a way for the government to make an ICBM shield. Thanks, Cold War. The two experiments connect through a time wormhole, and the generation on the Eldridge keep the portal open as it begins to suck in matter from 1984. The Philadelphia experiment underwhelmed at the box office, but for a select few, the movie triggered a new and old life. So the Philadelphia experiment, the USS Eldridge, during World War II, the government was experimenting with this type
Eldritch?
of... Eldridge.
IDGE.
ELDRIDGE. Eldridge. So this ship, U.S. government was on this Navy shipyard, was trying to use this type of time travel Nazi technology, and the ship literally blinked 40 years into the future. Like, they don't know how it happened. It just teleported, like, where'd it go? And then it's just there. Like, what? Went off the radar completely. Is it hard to think that we're not experimenting with some technology that might be out of the realm, or is it some types of psychics that opened up a portal into time travel? Is time travel out of the realm of possibility in your mind?
No. Not so few things are out of the realm of possibility in my mind, you know. I know there was I'm going to science hell forgetting his name. One of the most famous biologists in history said that, like, the mystery of life and how it grows from, like, a seed in the woman's womb to being a fully grown adult, or how, like, trees grow from seeds, that will be a mystery forever out of the reach of science and human understanding. Not just, like, really hard to do, forever out of the reach of science and understanding. That guy really felt a lot of emotion about not understanding something, obviously. So I'm not going to say it's out of the realm of possibility at all.
Well, after seeing the Philadelphia experiment in 1988, 57-year-old Albright couldn't shake the eerie feeling that he'd seen it somewhere before. Undergoing various forms of New Age therapies, Bellick was able to uncover repressed memories of having worked on the Montauk Project in the 1970s and 80s. He also ascertained that his memories had been locked away to keep the experiment secret. As his memories came flooding back, he learned that his name wasn't Albiak, after all, born Edward Cameron, but he also worked on the Philadelphia experiment with his brother Duncan Cameron, when both men were in the mid-20s. A few years later, Al Bielek presented his story at a Mutual UFO Network conference. The Philadelphia experiment was real, he said, and there was proof of having lived out the World War II section of the movie. Bielek claimed that sometime in the 1940s, Nikola Tesla figured out how to make the USS Eldridge invisible, and in the process owned up a time wormhole into the future that sucked in the ship. The Cameron brothers were on board, jumping off the vessel and landing at Montauk's Camp Hero on August 12, 1983. The military promptly sent them back through the wormhole with a mission: destroy the equipment on the Eldridge, and according to Bielek, the brothers completed their mission. Through that didn't stop the government from doing any more experiments on building portals into the future. So Nikola Tesla was involved. I believe that experiment a little bit more now that I knew Nikola Tesla was involved. Because that guy was developing some advanced stuff.
Well, this is
Besides dating a pigeon, he had some pretty good methods.
See, this is all based on this guy's repressed memories. And repressed memories have been completely...
disoriented.
They've just been totally classified as bullshit pseudoscience by the scientific community. And that, like, any repressed memories are most likely, like, people making...
I don't believe
people
that.
constructing memories in their brain.
I don't believe that. I've done too many topics on people known as sleeper agents, where MK Ultra uses this form of mind control to put these people under a site of hypnosis where they forgot the memories and erased everything, and they were performing actions like secret spies and stuff that they had no capability of doing or no training to do, but they were able to do it because they were under hypnosis. It's hard to believe what, like, if just because someone puts you under hypnosis and then they snap their fingers, you don't remember anything. It's hard to believe. Those obviously are burned into your brain somewhere, but they're locked away under some type of wall. So it's hard to think that repressed memories are not a thing. I don't believe that. I believe science is wrong in that mind. During a 1990 speech for the Mutual UFO Network, Balick described his vague, basically terms, how he de-aged, had his memory been wiped, and had been forced to live out the rest of his life as Al Balick, who explained how in the early 1960s he, as Edward, had convinced his father to have another child so they could port Duncan's consciousness from 1983 into the sibling born in 1963. Balick referred to the version of Duncan as a walk-in soul. He also suggested that a 1983 accident, as detailed as he gets, caused him to begin aging rapidly. This is when psychic powers became psychic espionage. Balick's stories circulated and gained the attention of Preston Nichols, who would befriend Balick and tell the Cameron brothers and his own story in the Montauk Project experiments in time. Nichols writes of his time working at Camp Hero on the secret experiments, specifically during the 1970s. He claimed he'd worked with Balick on something called the Montauk chair, a piece of furniture that used electromagnetics to amplify psychic powers. Duncan Cameron, the walk-in soul child version born in 1963, was found to have psychic powers and became the focus of many of the Montauk chair experiments. Apparently, Duncan could manifest objects just by thinking about them while in the Montauk chair. One of the experiments Nichols describes sounds a lot like the experiment being performed on Eleven before she opens the portal to the Upside Down. Who's 11? Is that part of Stranger
11
Things?
is that little girl right there.
So this is something that's involved in Stranger Things.
Yeah, 11 is the little psychic girl.
What did they show you on Stranger Things?
Well, she's a psychic, and
With the chair, then.
not her. I don't think she specifically did it, but these guys like somehow opened the rift into like a different dimension where these alien-looking mofos show up.
So, do you believe this is inspired by a conspiracy theorist, or is it some guy trying to make a show, and then now people are finding out that it's actually based on a true story? It says it right there in the caption.
I think it's more like a
Stranger Things and the Montauk Project. This true story.
It's a true story inspired. It's definitely like a very idealized.
Well, it's obviously been Hollywoodized for
it's
TV, but still.
Yeah.
It's based on a real project that you think if the government knew that this is what Stranger Things was, they would have even been open to letting Netflix display it.
I mean,
It was denied by 12 networks, so it's hard to think. Before Stranger Things, when it was called the Montauk Project, it was denied by 12 networks. There's obviously might be some government things like, we're not picking this up. This is ridiculous. And then Netflix changed the name to Stranger Things.
See, I believe that if they didn't let the X-Files run for like 10 years.
Yeah, but if you watch any of the X-Files, that's a load of crap.
Well, no, the X-Files is the X-Files. It's as
They were
crap
trying. They were. That was the whole point of the show, was trying to expose cryptids and things of this sort. Stranger Things is giving a government project.
Well, half of the X-Files is about how like the arcs are about how the government was like hiding aliens, like shit. Like shots of like people putting like proof of like documents with proof of alien life into like a storeroom in the Pentagon, like that kind of thing.
So apparently 11's the one that opens up the portal to the Upside Down, is what they called it.
Yeah.
The first experiment was called the Seeing Eye. With a lock of a person's hair or other appropriate object in his hand, Duncan could concentrate on the person and be able to see as if he was seeing through their eyes, hearing through their ears, and feeling through their body. He could actually see through other people anywhere on the planet. Let's talk about the abducted kids involved in the experiments. Nicholas continued to experiment with Duncan, who was such a powerful psychic that no one suspected that he was a man from a distant past inserted into a new body. He tried to harness his adept subject's powers in the Montauk chair to conduct mind control experiments using special radio dishes at Camp Hero. This is where the other children come in. In his book, Nichols writes of other boys being brought in and experimented on. Some were sent through a portal into the unknown of space-time. Stranger Things lifts this theory. The name 11 suggests that there are or were likely 10 other subjects. In Nichols' book, the abductees are known as the Montauk Boys, and since Nichols and Bialik started speaking about their regained memories, other Long Island men have rediscovered that they were frequently abducted from their homes by Camp Hero scientists who wanted to break them psychologically so that they could implant subconscious commands. Not to create a crazy Stranger Things theory out of thin air, but who's to say that Hopper's daughter really died of cancer? Duncan establishes a portal. After several years of experimenting with Duncan in the Montauk chair, Nichols claims that they could reliably travel to other times and places, even to Mars. Eventually, they were able to program Duncan with some basic commands so that the poor kid didn't need to be confined to the chair all the time. At one point, however, Nichols' superiors told him to turn on the Montauk chair and leave it running. Through August 12, 1983, as the story goes, by having another time travel machine switched on, the Montauk Project successfully created a time wormhole to 1943, with power at both ends. That's how Ed and the Duncan Cameron of 1943 came through the portal and that events described by Al Blake occurred. Nicholas kept Duncan of 1943 away from the 1963 version, but quickly realized that time travel was way too complex and far too dangerous to be messing around with, torturing children though just fine. He and 3 colleagues hatched a devising plan to use Duncan to shut down the project. So already they are talking about experimenting on this kid Duncan, and he's able to use his psychological powers to do types of time travel. So time travel is now apparently has happened, and we've already discovered it. It's just hidden away from the modern society.
See, time travel is like, it's super interesting, like for obvious reasons, it's super interesting, but like, there's also, it's infinitely potentially more dangerous than any like nuclear bomb we've ever created, like, do you happen to know that projections of what matter looks like in reverse time, it looks exactly like antimatter.
Yeah.
And antimatter, when introduced to like matter, creates an explosion. I think it's 1 gram of matter reacting with 1 gram of antimatter creates an explosion like that'll take out a continent.
I believe it. We do some
like
we create some pretty powerful things, man.
Like the idea, like reversing time. If it's dangerous simply in that respect, but then there's the idea of like erasing timelines, like what
alternate
happens
realities, possible worlds.
Yeah.
Listen, if we're able to create such crazy stuff in our minds now, back then, what's to stop our progress from continuing going into an area of time travel? Nazis
hopefully
had the first UFO flying saucer type thing, so.
See, I think as a species we'll get there eventually, but where we are right now, fucking with time travel is probably super duper dangerous.
For sure. Well, let's talk about Duncan summoning a monster. We finally decided we've had enough of the whole experiment. The contingency program was activated by someone approaching Duncan while he was in the chair and simply whispering, "The time is now." At this moment, he let loose a monster from his subconscious, and the transmitter actually portrayed a hairy monster. It was big, hairy, hungry, and nasty. But it didn't appear underground in the null point. It showed up somewhere on the base. It would eat anything it could find, and it smashed everything in sight. Several different people saw it, but almost everyone described a different beast. Nichols had to smash all the equipment that powered the Montauk chair before the beast disappeared back into nothingness. That incident, plus the successful time anchor that was built between August 12th, 1943 and August 12th, 1983, the ship that teleported 40 years, ensured that the project would be shuttered. Employees were then brainwashed, and in 1984, the lower levels of the base were filled in with cement. Even stranger things. Of the many bizarre stories of what happened at Camp Hero, Stranger Things only uses 3 of the core elements: portals, the monster, and children with psychic powers. But looking forward to Stranger Things Season 2, which has officially been greenlit by Netflix, the ongoing rumors of government misconduct at Montauk provide many creepy options for how the story of the boys, Eleven and Dr. Brenner, works out. Some testimonials from Montauk survivors make mention of alien life forms, either of the classic gray-skinned variety or something weirder, like giant lizard people or extra-dimensional beings that appear in a humanoid shape of hollow gas. The time travel element is also in play, and connections back to the Philadelphia experiment, the conspiracy theory that gave rise to all the Montauk stories. The bulk of the Montauk Project is set around the same time as Stranger Things, but true believers like Nichols and Balick, until he passed away in 2011, maintain that these experiments dealing with the expansion of human consciousness and future technology are still going on somewhere. Somehow in 2008, an unidentified carcass of an animal washed up on the beach of Long Island, adopting the label of the Montauk Monster. From the early 1990s version, Cameron's creation is commonly referred to as Junior Now. Urban explorers still venture into Camp Hero on Long Island, where some claim that they can still hear screams in the abandoned tunnels. Sporadic reports that the closed base still draws military levels of power despite being inactive persist, and the truth about the conspiracy lives on. What is your thoughts on the Montauk Project now that we've come to all this evidence and all this stuff in this show, Stranger Things? You diving into the realm of Stranger Things a little bit. And some of the core elements of Stranger Things, monsters, aliens, abductions, all kind of focus off from Montauk Project.
Something definitely happened. There wasn't,
You think it's like...
This kind of shit, there's always a grain of truth at the center.
You think it's like it's a story that keeps getting passed on. It seems like it's been kind of...
warped and like, all those crazy, insane things. And, to be fair, it could be like a potential CIA cover-up might take advantage of this fact, but like it doesn't make it any less it doesn't make it any less true that like only one or two people need to be totally lying for attention to like have that to be fake.
Whole bottom levels of it, of the where all the experimentation took place, was filled in with cement. So obviously they were trying to hide some information.
Yeah.
But do you believe that, first of all, people have a psychic ability like this, or psychic powers that can be amplified in a way? We have many inventions or things that we tried creating that would amplify people's psychic abilities, and we're still messing with that today.
There's definitely
I'm not
the idea of controlling things with like you're controlling your body with your brain. Like it's not beyond the realm of possibility, certainly.
I believe there's a frequency some people land on for sure. It's hard to think that anything's not existent. And there's all realms of possibilities out there. Who's to say we've discovered everything? If there's so many species of animals we still haven't discovered, who's to say there's so many things about the human mind, something so close to us that we barely understand fully? We don't know the full potential of what we're capable of doing. You never know. Nobody ever figures it out. Even after they die, it's an unleft mystery. So, what's your thoughts on the Montauk Project? Real or myth? Fact or fiction?
Why not both?
You believe some stuff's fictional about it, but a lot of it's like
that's the case with all this shit. There's always some level of truth,
And there's always some form of exaggeration.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for listening to this episode of Fill in the Blank. Stay tuned for the next episode, and maybe check out Stranger Things and see if that can give you some thoughts on the Montauk Project.